The Fisherman's UFO encounter, vertical bar alien encounters, fact or fiction. In the vast stillness of the open ocean, where the sky meets the sea in an endless horizon, even the smallest anomaly can feel monumental. For seasoned lobster fisherman John Levitt, what began as a routine October night at sea turned into a lifelong mystery. In the quiet company of friends and under a canopy of stars, Levitt witnessed strange lights performing movements that defied logic, hovering, shifting, then vanishing into the night. This encounter, like many others throughout history, challenges our understanding of reality and invites us to reconsider the boundaries of what we think is possible. Love true stories that blur the line between fact and fiction? Subscribe to explore more eerie and unforgettable encounters. John Levitt is the last person you'd expect to be caught up in a UFO story. He's a working-class fisherman, grounded, practical, and deeply familiar with the rhythms of nature. His days are ruled by tides, traps, and weather patterns. For John, the sea isn't just a workplace, it's a quiet, lifelong partnership with nature. And that's exactly what gives his story its quiet strength. He's not someone looking for attention. He's not spinning tales for profit or fame. He's just describing what he saw, with the kind of quiet certainty that only someone deeply connected to their environment can offer. There is no sensationalism in John's voice. He doesn't mention aliens, spacecraft, or time travel. He doesn't claim abduction or dramatic revelation. The most unnerving thing about his account is how ordinary it feels. He's simply recalling a moment that shattered the pattern of countless ordinary nights at sea. A moment that didn't fit into anything he knew. A moment that still lingers in his mind, unresolved. As he retells the encounter, there's a striking contrast between the fantastic nature of what he saw and the grounded tone with which he describes it. No exaggeration, no embellishment, just facts. Just confusion. The lights were there. They moved in ways that nothing else he's ever seen could. They hovered, they darted, they disappeared. He doesn't pretend to understand what he saw. He just says it plainly. It happened. I was there. I saw it. This is what makes his testimony so powerful. It isn't just the content of his story, it's the delivery. He's not trying to convince anyone. He's not preaching or theorizing. He's just reporting. In a world flooded with noise, wild claims, and viral hoaxes, his quiet honesty carries unusual weight. His routine, his experience, and his credibility become part of the evidence. Over the years, Levitt has seen all kinds of strange things at sea: auroras, shooting stars, rare weather phenomena, and even military test flights, but never anything like this. The lights that night didn't behave like anything natural or man-made. There were no wings, no sound, no blinking patterns typical of commercial aircraft. Their movement was too precise, too sharp, too intentional. For a man so grounded in the rhythms of nature, that's what makes it impossible to forget. It didn't follow the rules. There's also something quietly profound in the fact that his fellow crew members witnessed it too. These weren't dreamers or thrill seekers. These were hardened fishermen who relied on sharp senses, clear thinking, and calm nerves. And yet they stood there too, mouths slightly open, unsure of what to make of the lights that danced above the water. In the aftermath, John didn't rush to the media. He didn't try to sell his story. He barely spoke of it at all. Like many witnesses of unexplained phenomena, he hesitated. He knew how people would react, how quickly they'd laugh or dismiss it. But with time, and with the support of those who shared that moment with him, he came forward, not to persuade, just to be part of the record, to say, "I don't know what I saw, but I saw something." His routine, his lifestyle, his temperament, all of it adds credibility to the encounter. He wasn't looking for the extraordinary, it chose him, and his willingness to share it, without theatrics or agenda, offers something rare in today's world of sensational headlines, a simple, honest account of the unexplained. In the end, what makes John Levitt's testimony so powerful isn't that it proves anything, it's that it doesn't try to embellish or explain, it simply tells the truth as he lived it. It offers no easy answers, no grand conclusions, only the quiet courage of a man who saw something he can't explain, and chose to speak about it anyway. It all began with a quiet night at sea that took a sudden, unexplainable turn. It was the kind of night fishermen love: calm waters, close friends, and the good feeling that comes after a hard day of work. John Levitt, a seasoned lobster fisherman, had spent years navigating the Atlantic waters off the New England coast. Alongside his close friends and crew members, he was doing what he'd done countless times before, wrapping up the day's catch, enjoying a meal on deck, and letting the stillness of the ocean set the tone for some well-earned relaxation. The group shared laughs under the cool October sky, trading stories and enjoying the quiet rhythm of life at sea. The salty air, the scent of cooked seafood, and the sound of waves lapping against the hull created a soft backdrop to their evening. To them, this was routine, predictable, peaceful, and far removed from the chaos of life on land. But just as the mood had settled into comfort, something in the sky pulled John's attention away from the conversation. At first, it was just a light, nothing unusual, he thought. Maybe a plane or a distant ship's flare. Within seconds, that sense of normalcy began to dissolve. The way this light moved, it wasn't like anything John had ever seen before. It flickered strangely, then moved suddenly and sharply, not in a gradual arc like aircraft are known to do. Then came more lights, several of them, moving in complete silence, too quiet, too deliberate, unlike anything Levitt had encountered before. The lights hovered above the water, then shot across the sky with impossible speed, pausing mid-air, rearranging themselves like a silent ballet in the stars. The men on deck fell silent, their joking and chatter now replaced by a shared sense of unease. This wasn't just unusual, it challenged everything they knew about how things were supposed to move in the sky. Some of the lights pulsated, changing brightness in odd rhythms, almost as if responding to an invisible pattern or frequency. Levitt's instincts told him this was no ordinary aircraft. He had spent his life on the water, seen military jets, commercial planes, weather balloons, you name it. But this was different. The movement felt deliberate, too advanced, too precise, and far too silent to be anything he could explain. But what haunted John most wasn't the sight, it was the silence. On a still ocean night, sound travels far and clear. Yet there was no mechanical noise, no boom, not even the whir of a drone's propeller. Only the hush of waves breaking against the boat remained. After a few minutes, just as quickly as they had appeared, the lights vanished, not into the horizon, but straight up gone in an instant, leaving no trail, no smoke, no fading glow. It was as if they had never been there at all. The fishermen were left standing on the deck, staring at the sky, their minds racing to process what they had just witnessed. No one reached for a phone, no one shouted or panicked. They simply stood in stunned silence, grasping for an explanation that wouldn't come. Later, some would speculate on secret military aircraft, optical illusions, and natural phenomena, but none of those possibilities sat well with John. He hadn't just seen lights. He had felt something shift in that moment, an unsettling awareness that there are things out there we don't understand. In the days that followed, John would share his story quietly, cautiously, aware of how quickly such tales are dismissed or ridiculed. Yet he stood by what he saw. For a man whose life followed the steady rhythm of the sea, that one night shattered everything he believed to be normal. Naturally, such an unusual claim demanded a closer look, and the investigators didn't hold back. UFO stories often push people to extremes, either full belief in alien visitors or complete dismissal as illusions, mistakes, or hoaxes. But what makes this particular episode of Alien Encounters, fact or fiction, so refreshing is its commitment to critical inquiry without arrogance. Rather than exploiting John Levitt's story for shock value, the show's hosts, Mitch Horowitz and Chrissy Newton, approach the incident with a blend of healthy skepticism and genuine curiosity. Their approach is grounded in research, guided by science, but still open to the possibility that not everything can be immediately explained. From the outset, Horowitz and Newton take John's account seriously, not because they believe everything they hear, but because his credibility and demeanor warrant it. They recognize that dismissing him outright would be as intellectually lazy as blindly accepting his story. So they begin where good investigations should, with the known. The first step is to explore the environmental conditions of that October night. Was there unusual weather in the area? Could atmospheric phenomena like ball lightning, St. Elmo's fire, or reflections off ice crystals have created the illusion of hovering lights? The team pulls up weather data, satellite records, and maritime weather logs from the region. but nothing unusual appears. The skies were clear, no lightning storms. No optical illusions are known to produce sustained, geometric patterns of movement, like the ones John and his friends described. Next, they turned to maritime and aviation records. Could the lights have been drones, fishing boats, or aircraft from nearby naval bases? They combed through radar logs and air traffic records, checking for scheduled flights, military exercises, or shipping vessels in the area at the time. Again, the data reveals nothing that matches John's description. No aircraft logged in the region, no military tests, no ships in the direct vicinity. If the lights were man-made, they left no official trace. Still, the hosts refuse to rule out earthly explanations just because nothing obvious shows up. They discuss the growing capabilities of private drones, how some models can now perform acrobatic maneuvers, hover silently, and even form complex flight formations when programmed correctly. Could pranksters or hobbyists have been testing high-tech drones off the coast that night? It's possible, but unlikely. The location miles offshore in a dark, remote area isn't a typical testing ground for consumer tech, and the Fisherman didn't report hearing any buzzing, which is usually present with even the quietest drones. More importantly, the speed and precision of the lights seemed far beyond the capabilities of known technology. The hosts also raise a fascinating point about the difficulty of investigating UFO sightings after the fact. These are fleeting moments, seconds or minutes long, rarely captured on video or radar, and often witnessed by only a few people. Unlike physical evidence at a crime scene, lights in the sky leave no fingerprints. This makes it nearly impossible to confirm or debunk stories with certainty, and every case remains open to interpretation. The unexplained becomes a liminal space, a question mark that hovers just beyond reach. But what sets this analysis apart is the tone. Horowitz and Newton don't condescend. They don't mock John or the idea that something unusual might have happened. Instead, they lay out the possibilities, like investigators at a crime scene. One piece of evidence at a time, one theory after another, until all conventional explanations are exhausted. And when those are gone, they don't rush to fill the void with fantasy. They leave space for mystery. The show also highlights a key idea often overlooked in UFO discussions, that not knowing is okay. In an era obsessed with certainty, it's a radical act to say, we don't have an answer yet, and yet, that's what makes this story resonate. It's not about proving the existence of aliens, or discrediting believers. It's about honoring the complexity of human experience, and admitting that sometimes, the sky shows us things we're not ready to explain. In the end, John's encounter is left as it began, unexplained. But through the lens of Horowitz and Newton, it's treated with respect, rigor, and intellectual honesty. The lights remain unidentified not because we've given up looking, but because, for now, the evidence doesn't lead anywhere definitive. And maybe that's the most honest answer of all. Still, even with all the tools of science at their disposal, something remained just out of reach. In the world of unexplained phenomena, particularly in cases involving UFOs, there's often a delicate tension between hard science and the intangible nature of human experience. John Levitt's account is an honest, detailed report from a seasoned fisherman that falls squarely into this liminal space. Despite rigorous attempts by investigators to explain away what he and his companions saw using available data, radar records, aircraft logs, and weather anomalies, nothing provides a satisfying answer. And this absence of concrete evidence doesn't discredit John's story. Instead, it highlights a core truth. Science, as robust as it is, has limits. And when it comes to phenomena on the edge of our understanding, those limits become uncomfortably clear. In Levitt's case, every conventional path of inquiry comes up empty. The fishermen were not intoxicated. The weather was calm. There were no other vessels or aircraft nearby. The lights they saw did not conform to any known human-made technology in terms of speed, silence, or movement. They weren't stars or planets, which remain static. They weren't meteorites or flares, which appear and vanish quickly. What they were remains unknown, and, more importantly, unrecorded by the tools we typically rely on to validate reality: instruments, satellites, and scientific databases. This is not to say science has failed. On the contrary, science did its job. It ruled out what it could. It collected data, analysed radar logs, and examined potential military exercises. But the fact that nothing matched means we've entered a different territory, one where subjective experience becomes more valuable than measurable data. That's an uncomfortable notion for a society that places heavy emphasis on quantifiable proof. But as many researchers, psychologists, and philosophers have pointed out, human experience doesn't always conform to clean, testable hypotheses. John Levitt is not an attention seeker or conspiracy theorist. He's a man whose life revolves around repetition, precision, and reliability. The sea demands discipline. A mistake can be fatal. His account is shaped by that discipline, measured, calm, and grounded in years of experience reading the skies and seas. When he says the lights were unlike anything he's ever seen, it's not a claim made lightly, and therein lies the real value. Credible eyewitness accounts, especially those made without exaggeration or sensationalism, deserve to be taken seriously, even when science cannot immediately support them. The paradox here is that while science seeks answers, mystery often invites more meaningful reflection. In some ways, the enduring power of UFO encounters lies not in what we can prove, but in what we cannot. The unanswered questions force us to examine our assumptions about technology, about life elsewhere in the universe, and even about the nature of reality itself. They expose the cracks in our understanding and remind us that human knowledge is, by nature, incomplete. We live in a culture that often fears uncertainty. We're trained to seek closure, to demand explanations, to label everything. But some phenomena resist that demand. When science is unable to offer a conclusive answer, we're faced with a choice: either dismiss the experience entirely or learn to live with the question. In this case, learning to live with the question may be the more intellectually honest and emotionally resonant choice. Moreover, mystery has value in and of itself. It stirs the imagination. It drives exploration. It encourages humility in the face of a vast, complex universe. If everything could be neatly explained, there would be no room left for wonder. Stories like John's pull us back into that space of wonder, a space where the sky is not just a blank canvas for satellites and weather balloons, but a place where the unknown still lives. Even within scientific communities, there is a growing recognition that not all unexplained events are hoaxes or hallucinations. Programs like AATIP, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, and recent disclosures by the US government have legitimized the idea that some aerial phenomena remain unresolved despite extensive technological scrutiny. This cultural shift allows for cases like Levitt's to be taken more seriously, not as evidence of aliens, but as a sign that our current models of the universe may still be missing important pieces. John's story shows us the limits of what science can explain right now. It shows us where logic and measurement stop, and where human perception takes over. This doesn't mean we should stop asking questions or investigating further. On the contrary, it means we must do both. We must interrogate the unknown with scientific tools, while also respecting the depth and honesty of human testimony. We must hold space for wonder alongside skepticism. And perhaps, most of all, we must learn to be at peace with not knowing, because sometimes the silence after a mystery speaks louder than any answer ever could. And as strange as it may seem, John's story is far from unique. John Levitt's strange night at sea isn't just an isolated event. It's part of a larger pattern that's repeated across cultures, continents, and decades. From fishermen in the North Atlantic, to pilots over Arizona, to villagers in rural Brazil, or soldiers in wartime Europe, people from all walks of life have reported seeing unexplained lights in the sky, craft that defy known physics, and phenomena that simply don't match up with any current scientific explanation. These stories may differ in the details, but they all follow a familiar pattern, one that links people around the world across different times and places. The most compelling of these elements is the witness profile. In most credible UFO encounters, the witnesses are not thrill seekers, fame chasers, or believers in the fantastical. They are people like John, grounded, practical, and often reluctant to come forward. Many are military personnel, commercial pilots, police officers, or professionals in positions of trust and responsibility. The way they describe it sounds ordinary, even though what they saw was anything but silent objects, lights moving in geometric formations, and behaviors inconsistent with aircraft or natural events. This consistency in tone lends weight to their stories, even in the absence of material proof. Whether the event occurred in the 1947 Roswell incident, the 1980s Rendlesham Forest case, or during John's 2023 fishing trip, the reported behavior of these unidentified objects is often eerily similar. Sudden accelerations, right-angle turns, hovering without sound, disappearing without a trace. These aren't just strange sights, they move in ways that break the rules of how flying objects are supposed to work. That's part of what keeps investigators, skeptics, and believers alike so captivated. If these reports are truthful, they point to something that challenges the very limits of what we know. But perhaps the most frustrating element in this pattern is the conclusion, or lack thereof. Time and again, investigators delve into these stories. They comb through radar logs, analyze footage, and interview witnesses. Yet time and again, they hit the same wall, no conclusive explanation. This doesn't mean the reports are hoaxes. Rather, it reflects the limits of evidence when events are brief, unexpected, and difficult to record. The phenomena don't land, leave debris, or announce themselves. They come and go without warning so fast and clean that our instruments never even catch up. The fact that these stories remain unsolved leaves us with questions, but also with the chance to learn something new. UFO stories live in the tension between belief and disbelief, proof and mystery. For some, this ambiguity is uncomfortable. They want hard evidence or definitive dismissal. But for others, this very uncertainty is what makes these stories important. They show that not everything in our world has been catalogued or explained, that the universe still holds secrets we've yet to uncover. Culturally, the recurrence of these narratives also reflects something deeply human: the need to question, to explore, and to remain open to the unknown. Ancient texts speak of chariots of fire and divine lights descending from the heavens. Indigenous cultures across the globe have myths about sky people or spirits arriving from the stars. Today, these myths have transformed into UFO lore, but the core impulse is the same. We are fascinated by what lies beyond the visible world. John's encounter, then, is not just another story. It's a thread in a much larger web of reports, investigations, and questions that span generations. The fact that it echoes so many similar events, witnesses stunned by silent lights, investigators left puzzled, and no easy answer in sight points to a kind of global phenomenon, or at least a shared human experience of the unexplainable. And in that, perhaps, lies the most important message. These stories invite us not to blindly believe, but to stay curious, to ask more questions, to push the boundaries of what we think we know. Whether or not UFOs represent alien visitors, experimental tech, or natural anomalies we haven't yet identified, they remind us of one undeniable truth. The universe is bigger, stranger, and more mysterious than we've dared to imagine, and that alone makes the search worthwhile. In conclusion, the Fisherman doesn't confirm extraterrestrial visitation, but neither does it fit neatly into conventional categories. Its power lies in its simplicity, credibility, and the silence that follows. In a world that often demands instant answers, this encounter is a reminder that not all mysteries are meant to be solved right away. Sometimes, the most profound revelations come not from what is proven, but from what stubbornly resists explanation. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and stay curious, because the truth might still be out there,